I want to talk a little bit more about the drought tolerance aspect of the garden here. And any garden is a work in progress. And there are two things going on here. Yes, I'm doing names on rocks, and it's an angel and remembering garden. But you'll also notice I've started to put small opuntia plants in different places. And my biggest decision right now is, do I put them in the ground or do I put them in better pots? How am I going to do this? And do I then incorporate the rocks into different designs? If I had bought bags of river pebbles, I would be planting the cacti in the ground, and then maybe all of them, even those in the big containers, and then surrounding them with the river rocks, because first of all, it's perfect for if you don't like to weed your garden, which I have some weeding to do. It's also better for the cacti, especially if you're growing. I have opuntias. What I was going to put marigolds in. Those are fairly drought tolerant. They also keep bugs away. In my little space here, I used to have my pine tree, which the ants killed because they were farming aphids on my tree. I took my tree down. The ants, it took them a couple of years, but they came back. You can see them among the rocks. What I did was I threw big rocks in a pile where the tree used to be, and the ants are now making that home. So in other words, in this space, that's where my tree was. The ants won and I lost. I could have replanted another tree there, and I probably would have lost it the same way I lost the first one. These are Carpenter Ants. Now they are. They were, oh wait a minute, these might be just regular little old black ants. We have Carpenter Ants near the house. So nature sets up these boundaries where different insects claim different areas, and you're going to have the same battle with the same insects for the most part, unless you eradicate them. And getting rid of a large ant colony is almost impossible. So I did the smart thing. I just have to try not to knock everything over as I step out of here. Is the other reason to have river rocks and a rock bed. You can walk on the rock bed, maybe not the rocks with the names on them, and not walk on the plants. You can walk around them, make little pathways. But drought tolerance, originally when I first got my degree, that's what I was going to focus on. On the Cape we have a lot of rhododendrons, azaleas, and annuals. Any kind of annual. People love to put annuals in. And so this was in 2005, so that's like 17 years ago. I already noticed that everything was out of balance. We can put all these annuals in and keep doing that every year, but it doesn't help the soil. Annuals are not a viable addition really to the soil unless every year you pull them up, put them in a compost pile, and put all that back into the soil. They take more than give. When you plant perennials, and specifically drought-tolerant perennials, which are an advantage for people, you don't have to water the garden all the time, you don't have to pick all the bugs off the strawberries, that kind of thing. But it also gives a root structure to the ground, and you're actually saving the soil. And where we are really, we're an island placed on top of a big puddle of water, and our water table is so high that if you don't give the soil structure, you're more likely to have your yard washed away in a flood or whatever. that is why pine trees are so important to the Cape. They actually keep the Cape right here. And you can add to that by doing drought tolerant plants. So any kind of cacti, these are all cold hardy, which means I can leave them there for the winter if I want to. So my lease is renews in around May. So my decision right now is, where am I going to put the plants? How am I going to lay this out? Am I going to put them in the ground? Am I going to move? There are 4 yellow flowered cold hardy cacti right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Am I going to pull those out of the garden and just do humifusas and try to get a humifusa bed going here? Because, well, these are strawberries. And I didn't plant strawberries. The birds did. This is mugwort, which is from the back of my yard. The last time I planted mugwort was at least 15, 20 years ago. So the birds, what my goal here is, a bed of opuntia, and remember that opuntias are vegetables, a bed of opuntia that are flowering and blooming, and low maintenance, a place where I can toss all the rocks I want to toss, and yet, hopefully, if they were blooming, they would also be gorgeous. I mean, this would be a beautiful situation. Now, I can add sedums. I have some sedums around anyway. I can add, they're called hens and chicks, sempervivums. Those are a good ground cover if you don't want to do rocks. You can take a low maintenance succulent garden and add statuary of any kind and really make a beautiful spot in your yard. So it's something more to think about than just the angels are remembering. The theme here is really, I mean, if you go in this shot right here, I've got a huge piece of white quartz, I think that is. I don't think I'd end up with marble. It looks like marble, but it's probably white quartz. And I've got all of these different opuntias that I have to decide what to do with. Cape soil, if you're going to plant to the dirt, if you know, you go to Maryland and they have lots of cherry trees and stuff, everything that does well in Maryland likes the Maryland soil. Same with Washington, Oregon, Iowa. So here in Massachusetts on the Cape, we are almost all sand. It's a perfect place for succulents, which then make a statement. You can make a statement. So like I said, we have lots of rhododendrons. People buy azaleas. I've got some miniature rhododendrons, PJMs. These are all natural. The scent over here is absolutely gorgeous. These are all forget-me-nots and lily of the valley. So this is a typical planting. Daylilies, lily of the valley, and forget-me-nots, as I said. And here's the typical problem, bittersweet. Bittersweet is a vine that the birds need to survive, but it'll kill just about anything. Or on the wall, English ivy, same thing. I have to take all of that down. The English ivy actually has made it through the wall into one of the rooms in my house. These plants don't quit. And then in the center is a white oak. So this is a typical planting, but now if you imagine this with all cacti and rocks, it does give a southwestern style effect and less greenery. It's just as efficient. It's just as important to the wildlife. Now, harvester ants, which are the typical ant you get in an ant farm, actually are called harvester ants because they move seeds from one place to another. So those ants that are already living here would actually be a benefit to a cacti garden and not a detriment the way they were to the tree. So all of these things go into a year's worth of planning for a garden. So now I have to decide, am I going to put the plants in the ground and cultivate, work them into a garden bed. If I had my druthers and was doing that, I'd give myself at least 3 years, and I would also have already bought at least 30 or 40 more plants, Opuntia humifusa plants. They're hard to find. This is why these others may come out of there, and I can cut pads and start new plants. So I can do it that way. It's a whole other way of looking at gardening, especially with global warming and water restrictions in California. We need rain. My trees this year, I have about 20 small trees, and a few of them turned brown. We didn't get enough rain, and so they're recovering. You know, that's kind of the way things are going. People have to intervene when there isn't the right kind of weather. This is the easiest type of garden to intervene with. Something for you to think about. Now, the other thing you can do with any yard, and I have a fairly small yard compared to friends of mine, is use containers or plantings to make areas of garden. These are the trees. I just brought them around from the side because the wind is picking up. And here's an example of a couple of them that did not do well over the winter. And they're a little bit brown, and you would throw them away or cut them or whatever if you didn't have this, which is new growth at the top. So and the other ones are a little bit ahead of them. That's new growth on, these are eastern white pines. So even if you get minimal tip damage on the needles, you get new growth and the tree should be fine. This is a much bigger tree, which also sustained some damage here. But I don't need to do anything with that. I could take this branch off, but there is still growth there. So sometimes you just back off and you let the tree take care of itself. Now, these are Norway spruce, which did not at all receive the damage that the eastern white pines did. You know, I mean, the different trees are different. This is an eastern white pine that looks dead, but you have to look closely. So last week, this growing point, this was all green and this was going to be new growth, and I figured, okay, I'll give it a week. So now that's dead, but look what it's done. It found another way to put out new growth. I was going to take this off, same thing. This is now opening up. Now here's another one, dead, and look what it's doing. It's sending out new growth, which tells me the tree itself is still alive. Now, this is the most disappointing. This is about 2 feet tall. It takes like 3 years to get that tall. So the upper branches seem to be dead. I don't see any green. I see green in the stem, but no new growth. And this is actually dying more than it was before. And what you have to ascertain here is whether or not these branches have some kind of an insect infestation. And see, this is where you have to look closely. Look at that. That is a new branch. And what I was going to do is take it off right here and grow it as a bonsai. Trim anything dead off and grow it as a bonsai, but now I don't have to do that because of that little tiny green ray of hope. That is new growth. So it's going to look brown. I'm going to leave it alone. It's going to look brown, more like cattails at the beach than an eastern white pine. If the wind picks up worse today, I'll bring it in the house. In other words, I'm going to baby it as far as the wind goes, because this is wind damage. I had bags on them in a couple of storms, but on all the storms I had the bags on, but there were a couple of storms where the bags actually got blown off, even though I had them tied on. So it takes maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour to suck the life out of the needles with the wind. But, like I said, new growth is new hope. So we're going to leave this alone. It'll be our Charlie Brown tree for a while. We're going to take care of all of them. These are called candles. If the wind picks up, I'll either bring them in or put tree bags on them. They're all like little friends. And what you can do with containers, these are all 1 gallon containers, I think. You can arrange them just like rocks or statues or plantings. Now this wind is off and on, but gusting above 20 miles an hour. So this is why I'm outside moving the trees when I needed to be doing something else. In some ways, it truly is a nursery. You have to meet their needs. But if I wanted to, I could take, I think I said there are 20 of them. Probably the Norway spruce would be better suited for this because of the ants that I talked about. But I could take the Norway spruce and space them out here in the garden and put river rocks around them and have a little tree nursery. There are so many things you can do with gardening. With perennials, these chives are a perennial. I've got perennial geraniums behind that. The forsythia is a perennial, obviously. I'm actually trying to grow dandelions in some of these containers because dandelions are also a vegetable. So COVID taught me a few things. A friend of mine called the other day and said, I'm going to get your marigolds, what do you want? And I said, you know what, I don't really need them now. They're going to get picked over quickly, which is why she had called. But I have alternatives. And here is thyme. Thymus vulgaris, mother of thyme. An herb that you can use in all kinds of cooking. There are natural plants you can use to work with the environment, with your soil, with the garden, and with trees, and have a wonderful, sustaining yard.